Tony Fucelli was asked once, do you like the process of animation? And he says, no, because it's tedious, it's hard. But he says, I love the result. I love the look. And that's why we all do it. Because we love to see these drawings come to life. Boy, when I was a kid, I drew mostly superheroes. So I remember even one time visiting my brother and him taking me to his college class and sitting in on the lesson and, you know, actually really getting inspired about working in charcoals. So I did that all my teenage years. And one thing, though, that really set me off as an artist, got me very excited, was after I got into doing charcoal pieces, my art teacher went to the local museum, and he told him about me. He said, hey, we got this kid, draws a lot, draws these things, and he showed him some of the pieces. And so they featured me for about a month in my own gallery showing of this 13-year-old kid in Elko, Nevada for a time. And I was advertised on the radio and so forth. And to a kid, that really boosts your ego and says, hey, I'm getting some success out of this. I think I'm going to do this more. And so I did. Nobody's going to ask what your grades were at CalArts or on any other school. That's true today. Nobody's going to ask you, were you a good student at CalArts or whatever. They're going to ask you, let me see your work. They want to know where you went to school because it already gives them information that, oh, okay, they've been through certain things and they know certain things, because there are good schools and bad schools. But the most important thing is they're going to ask you to show your work. And so that's my advice to anybody going to any school is, yeah, you got to learn what you got to learn, but bottom line is they want to see your work and what you did while you were there. And that's what will get you a job. My teachers at CalArts, there were some really great teachers there. I was very fortunate to have Glenn Villepeu, who was in charge of the program the 2 years I was there. And he also taught his figure drawing classes then. Funny thing was I didn't connect with his teaching at the time. I got little bits, but I wasn't good at life drawing, figure drawing. And, you know, he'd sit down and he'd do his thing over my drawings or the next to it and stuff. I didn't really understand his concepts. I probably didn't try hard enough at the time either. I was more of a guy that would just try and render something out instead of construction. Like, I learned that later in my career and saw the gold in what he was teaching later, especially when I started teaching figure drawing. I went back to his lessons he gave us, handouts and stuff. I was like, oh, all right, you really knew what you were talking about. And he did, you know, fabulous drawings. I love Glenn because he has a method of teaching that is old school, like of the masters, and you know that's kind of rare, I think, in some of today's teaching. One of my teachers, Kevin Johnson, my animation teacher, he always used to tell us, you should animate from your own experiences. You know, go live life and let it influence you, and then put that into your work. And so when I had to choose a film to do, I chose something that was, you know, important to me. Just before I became a student of animation, I was a karate instructor, and that was a big part of my life. I loved the martial arts, and so it was something I knew, you know, as far as technique and moves and so forth. So I chose to do that type of film as a subject matter my first year. Second year, I thought there was a void. People weren't really doing a lot of Western films, especially in animation, almost none. Even today, there's been almost none. And so I thought, having grown up on a ranch and so forth, maybe I could bring a little into that. And I decided to just take, because I wanted to be an animator. I didn't particularly want to be a storyboard artist or anything. So I took a Western film, took a piece of dialogue into that and just animated to it. And that film actually is the one that I got attention from. Interesting story here is when the producer's show came, and that short film that wasn't even finished got put into the producer's show. The companies were actually told, don't take anybody that's not a fourth-year student, because during that time they were grabbing people right out of school and everybody was taking off, and so they were told not to make offers to kids that weren't seniors. I couldn't afford to go anymore of CalArts. It was so expensive for me and my family. I just couldn't. 2 years was my limit, and I knew I had to go get a job. So it was really interesting that in producer's show they misprinted in the program that I was a fourth-year student instead of a second-year student, and I got offers that weekend. That very weekend, it was a Friday. No, it was producer's show. I think was a Thursday. Friday morning, I got offers from Warner Brothers, and Don Bluth came with their representative and got. So that film was my door to the industry, the producer show. And so I decided to go with Warner Brothers. I think I got 3 different offers, and I took Warner Brothers because I would be an animator right off. It was an animator apprentice that would be in training for, I think it was 9 months, and then after that I was a full-fledged animator. So that was my segue into the animation industry, which was great. So my first job, Warner Brothers, was fantastic. I can't think of one bad thing. There was no negative thing there really, other than I think they threw money away on needless things where it made everybody feel good and so forth, but didn't justify the money that the films were bringing in that we made, which was Space Jam, Quest for Camelot, Osmosis Jones. Those were not, Iron Giant. None of those were big box office. So a string of those, it just made it decline until they had to get rid of the whole program. And so I thought I was going to be an animator, probably there forever. I was going to become an old man doing exactly what I loved, but it didn't turn out that way. I had some great mentors there. I went through 3 mentors. One was Wendy Perdue, excellent animator. Nasos Vikalis, now he's doing storyboards for DreamWorks, but he's a great animator. And Crystal Klabundi, who was, to this day, has done some of the best animation I've ever seen. And so those influences, Nasos, he helped me get my design better when I draw, because I'd look at, I'd kind of draw what I see from life, and it kind of made it bland. Well, he would do a drawing over my, I remember him doing particular the villain, the mouth, him helping me with the mouth and helping me get design style better, because there's cartoon design, as opposed to realistic design. And then Crystal Klabundi had a way, I learned more from her going over my drawings, just constructing a difficult pose, than anything I've ever learned from any instructor, just talking. She every time she would put a paper over and do an overlay on top of my drawing, I learned tons, oodles from that. And then Wendy Perdue had a way of acting, just tender acting, the thoughtfulness and the character. And so you and I talked before, you're absolutely right. The mentoring system is the best system in traditional animation for sure. Let me just talk about Iron Giant for a minute. That was a peak of my career, working with Brad Bird on Iron Giant. He was a wonderful director, and one of the things I like most about, and I learned most from Brad Bird, was that he didn't care where a good idea came from. He didn't care if it was him or if it was the janitor over there. He just wanted the best idea to make the product the best it could be, or that scene the best it could be. And he'd get frustrated trying to find an answer he always used to project up onto a whiteboard, the scene, and then he would, draw corrections what he thought a pose should be, and he'd always think about film design. But if he was frustrated trying to think, he would be upset if people were not chiming in. He'd look behind, he'd get frustrated and say, "Come on, guys, help me out here. What do you think?" And that's what makes him a great director. A lot of directors I've worked with, it's their way, and you have to find it. But Brad Bird was very good that way. I didn't think he had an ego like that. He really cared about the filmmaking and the product we were making, and made it more of a team thing. That's, I think, what makes him so great, is he injected this passion to everybody about the quality, and you get frustrated if people didn't try and meet that, So you really did. I think that was a similar quality of Walt Disney, is everybody wanted to please him, and they could recognize the greatness of his leadership and what he was trying to accomplish with the project. So that was a great experience to work with Brad Bird. Interesting how I got into teaching at CalArts. I was working on the Iron Giant, and I remember I was doing a pencil test, and one of the teachers at CalArts at the time was a great, fantastic animator named Mike Wing. He's started his own, film and company, and has been working on that for a long time right now. But back then, we were colleagues, and he came to me and he said, there's an opening to teach at CalArts this next year. Would you like to do that? And I said, no, I don't think so, but thank you. And then I think the next day he came up again, and he was kind of pushing about it. I just didn't want to do it, but I decided to do it in the end. And it's hard, when you've never done that before. And so when I prepared and I did it, I don't think I was a fantastic teacher, but I did my very best. And it is a transition. Some people, and I think I can teach okay. I've had experience, like I said, I was a martial arts instructor before. In my church, I've had many opportunities to do teaching and so forth. And then, but other than that, I haven't, done any teaching for animation. But so that was my first experience doing that. And so I was there for about 3.5 years, it was 3.5 years before I was sent overseas. And that was invaluable. It is invaluable, because when you try to teach the things that you've learned, it just puts you in a whole new level. The journey from animator to director for me, it came when I started my own business. I mean, I've supervised thousands of artists overseas and in different venues, but as far as directing our own stuff, it's been our own projects that I've had experience directing in, and I've always had strong opinions about how to lead a group, because I've done that a lot in different things in my life. But directing in animation, the experience I've had before this is just watching certain directors and being directed by them. And so now when I'm directing my own people here in our company, these are some of the important things to me. And I found that they're effective. And that is, first of all, being an animator. I remember somebody in the industry high up once told me, he was the head of a studio, he once told me, he said, I never like to put animators as directors, because they always nitpick everybody, and they always nitpick these things that really don't matter and stuff. And I think he has a point, because they wouldn't do it a certain way, it's not their way. So, and I think there's certain people that come to my mind when he says that, and so that always stuck with me. But I think they can be great directors too. I mean, there has been, if you can name the animators that have become directors, and I just think it's important that that you learn to recognize make what somebody has created work instead of just changing it. So if somebody comes and they have an idea of how to do a certain scene, I usually try to just build on it or change it within what they've tried to create to make it work really well. Of course, it has to fit all of the necessary requirements for the scene, but at the same time, if it's not the way that I would do it, but it still works, and I always try and work with them to make it work within those perimeters. So that's going from animator to director. That's sometimes the very challenge, is that you've got to pull back and say, okay, I wouldn't do it that way, but you know, that's a pretty valid idea. Good job. Let's go with that. What I like about traditional animation is there's a certain beauty that's there. That every frame was hand drawn. There's a warmness to it. What attracted me to the animation business was literally the wonderful, beautiful drawings that somebody could do, and it was amazing. And that's what I wanted to do, and bring that to life. And there's no better feeling than that to me. And I don't want to lose that. And so I choose to keep drawing.